RWBY has earned the respect and love of thousands of people across the globe. Its fast-paced action with likable characters has no doubt earned Rooster Teeth notoriety in the anime community. And what do you do when you have millions of weebs banging on your door to make more content? Well, you make a game. And thus, Rooster Teeth decided to make RWBY Grimm Eclipse, a hack-and-slash game on Steam based on the original cast of the show. And as a fan of hack-and-slash games myself, I figured I might as well try it out. And I was surprised by the results, so I decided to make a video about it. And before I get attacks on this video, I'm reviewing RWBY Grimm Eclipse, the game. This video has no connection to the anime, as I haven't watched more than 5 minutes of it. If you came here because you need to validate your own opinion on the show, you've come to the wrong place. Let's start with the most basic thing and the only thing so far that doesn't bother me too much, the class system. Pretty much every character is very distinct aesthetically, giving a good range of characters to relate to. However, the gameplay of each character doesn't actually vary that much. The RWBY set, consisting of Ruby, Wise, Blake, and Yang, and the only free characters, are entirely melee DPS, which not only leads to possible burning out on the game, because there's little variety in playstyle, it also means modes like Horde, where you run around trying to protect some computer thing from hordes of skeleton dogs, comes down to mindlessly beating mobs, instead of making strategies with different class capabilities. Now, let me defend that point. There are different possibilities. For example, my favorite character, Blake, has a long-range AoE stun, which can allow really nice wombo combos. But, at least in my opinion, it's not something that happens often enough to take away from the fact that it's all melee DPS characters running around beating skeleton dogs until you either lose because you're overwhelmed, which only happens because you don't have a fucking healer or tank to keep you alive, or you get bored of literally doing the same thing for however long, again because you have nothing other than melee DPS. Another thing I noticed that's kind of problematic, not to me, but I figured it could be to a lot of people wanting to try the game, is the actual combat system. Forgetting the fact that every class is melee DPS, they're generally not even that hard to master. I mean, really, most of the time you're just hitting left and right mouse button while dodging and countering until you get your ultimate up. The actual combat can get stale pretty fast. The only reason this doesn't bother me too much is because one of my favorite things to do in games like Grimm Eclipse are find combos that aren't super obvious and exploit them to optimize DPS. I think a lot of people find the animations of the abilities to be really aesthetically pleasing, and something like that can kind of distract from the fact that the game itself isn't actually that pleasing. And I would agree with that when I was younger. I loved huge AoE glowing strikes. It's what got me into RPGs and hack and slash in the first place. However, I don't think this adds anything to the game, because any other subpar hack and slash will likely have the same thing, if not better. So while yes, I think the combat looks cool, it's not really a plus, more like a standard. I wouldn't give somebody a pat on the back for meeting one minimum expectation, so I'm not going to do it for Grimm Eclipse either. Before I discuss the maps, I want to explain how the actual game Grimm Eclipse works. RWBY Grimm Eclipse takes place on several different instanced stages that follow a pretty linear path of walking for a while with absolutely no threat, get into an open area, fight off a mob of skeleton dogs, walk for a little while with absolutely no threat, get to another open area with a mob of skeleton dogs, and maybe an objective over and over for every map. Not only is this fucking stupid, but the fact that unless you're in an open area, there's no threat is kind of boring. I want my adventure through this world to be exciting, but instead it feels more like that thing in Spelunky where the menu isn't an actual menu and it's you playing the character to go to certain parts of the menu. I don't know if that makes sense. It probably doesn't. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that unless you're in a big open area, nothing is going on. There's no tension at all. You know exactly what's going to happen at every turn on every map, and it's fucking stupid. Another pretty unfortunate fault in the map design is that there's nothing really to explore. If you're like me and you want to deviate from the main part of the story to explore the world, you kind of can't. It's pretty boring everywhere other than the areas where you fight, which is really strange because they hide these artifacts outside of the main path that give lots of XP. And to me, that sounds like a really cool way to encourage exploration. But when there's nothing to look at while getting the artifacts, it doesn't feel like they tried to design an interesting world at all. More like they just copy-pasted some trees and grass, so it's not just a blank square you're walking around on. The last and most annoying aspect of this game to me is somewhat connected to my last point about exploration. This is going to seem a little strange to be the thing I hate most, but bear with me. This game has so many invisible barriers. Now, like I said, I really enjoy deviating from the main game so I can explore the maps. And when I found that pretty much everything is blocked by an invisible barrier, I was actually devastated. I don't really like invisible barriers that stop me from jumping off the map, and that's usually all there is in games as far as the barriers go. But no, Grimm Eclipse had to take this retarded concept a step further and set up barriers in pretty much every part of the game that doesn't lead to more mobs or artifacts. I am really annoyed by this because if a game like this doesn't have any kind of possible exploration, all that's left is the combat. But the combat is boring and repetitive, so what can I really say I enjoy about Grimm Eclipse? Or rather, what does Grimm Eclipse offer that any other half-assed mediocre hack and slash doesn't? I think something like that is important to consider before buying the game just because it's associated with the RWBY series.